Welcome everyone to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar, today sponsored by our friends at Fulcrum. I'm Barbara Duke, Managing Editor here at Directions Magazine with our assistant webinar producer, Lynette Qualia. We appreciate you stopping by directionsmag.com for feature articles, daily news, podcasts, and of course more webinars. A warm welcome to Sophie and Coleman. They are sharing field stories with us today, as well as some very helpful demonstrations to help you improve your organization's processes. We are excited to learn more about how to make this work and be effective. So welcome, Coleman and Sophie. Coleman, over to you first.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Coleman McCormick. I'm the VP of Product here at Fulcrum, leading our product development efforts and working a lot with customers on the different use cases that people are deploying Fulcrum for. So I'm glad to be here today talking with Sophie Frohmader from Wonderful Orchards, a longtime customer of ours who's been kind of gradually expanding their use of Fulcrum and using it in a lot of different and interesting ways. So we're going to be talking about several of those use cases today. So to kick it off, I wanted to hand it over to Sophie here to introduce herself and talk a little bit first about Wonderful Orchards and what you all do.
Well, my name is Sophie Frohmader. I'm the reporting manager at Wonderful Orchards. Wonderful Orchards is a farming company that grows pistachios, almonds, and pomegranates in California's Central Valley. And we have approximately 95,000 acres of planted ground across those three crops. Wonderful Orchards is part of the Wonderful Company, which is a privately held company with brands that some of you might be familiar with, like Wonderful Halos, Palm Wonderful, and Fiji Water, among others.
Excellent. And then, as I mentioned at the top there, you all have been using Fulcrum for a number of years now. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ways you use it, just in a general sense, how you started out using Fulcrum, how that's matured over time, and kind of the number of use cases and things that you've discovered over the years as you've been using the product?
Sure. So to date, we've created over 45 different Fulcrum applications across our business. And that's in a wide range of areas like irrigation, pest management, environmental health and safety, quality control. But it started off with some summer R&D projects that we were doing, and then grew into different areas because we had our field users pushing to expand Fulcrum and make their jobs easier. Location-enabled data, like the kind that you could collect in Fulcrum, is really important to our business because so many of the variables that impact farming are location-based. So when we look at one of our ranches, we think about, what our temperatures were throughout the year. Did we get enough chill hours in the winter? How much rainfall did you get in that area? Then how much water did we apply? What were our pest pressures? So all of those variables that could impact the quality and the size of our crop are tied to location. So when we're collecting data and when we're reporting that, we always want to do it in the context of location, because the decisions or actions that people are going to take are going to be different from one location to another. And then I mentioned, we're a pretty large operation, so we're geographically spread out, and having location-enabled data helps us work more efficiently. So again, this started off with one or two apps, and now it's continuing to grow. We get new requests often, and what we found is that once you get one, we'll call it department, using one Fulcrum app, then you get them interested in using 2, 3, and 4. They come up with different use cases that could help them to do their job.
That's great. I love that users from across the organization are allowed to be creative and think of new kind of ways to both make their job easier, make the company's data better, make the processes better. How many people in the company are kind of managing and putting out these Fulcrum projects from the kind of office side, the back office?
Yeah, so the work on the actual Fulcrum platform of maintaining and creating new apps is done by two people in our company. That'd be me and an analyst on my team. And we're responsible for, gathering specifications and working with the users to build the app. And then our IT team has set up the process to pull the Fulcrum API, and that pretty much runs on its own. They also support us by creating custom data sources that we need when we're linking out to what would be other silos of information. And then our GIS team helps support Fulcrum by providing the map layers that we import in the app and other location information that we need to build our apps. So the general support would be my team and sort of data collection and reporting, IT and GIS on the back end as well. Excellent.
Yeah, so that shows really how there's a little bit of something for everybody, and the data that comes out of Fulcrum really drives a number of different aspects of the business. So from here, I think what we'd like to do is dive into some of these use cases. So what we're going to do is Sophie's going to walk through these three different styles of use cases: irrigation, irrigation maintenance. There's a safety use case, and also one related to plant health monitoring. And they're all a little bit different, but show kind of unique sorts of workflows that you can do powered by location and field data collection. So let's start here. What you got up there is the irrigation maintenance process. Give us an introduction to that, just sort of how it works, what are you doing that for, and the general process for maintaining the irrigation systems.
Okay, so this app is used to report problems in our irrigation system. So things like leaks in the field, pumps and wells that are down, broken valves, really anything that's going to affect our ability to water our trees. And the main objective of this application is to be able to quickly report problems with all the information that we need, and also then give visibility and tracking to the progress and the completion of work on those requests by the maintenance team. So what we're seeing on the screen is a point for every request, and each record represents a request and its state. So I'm gonna show you the color legend here. So the orange indicates that this request has been reported. Yellow means it's in progress. So the maintenance team has made some kind of assessment or started the work on that request, fixing that leak, for example. And then the green is indicating that that request is complete and the problem has been resolved and we can run water again. So we can open up one of these. Well, first of all, you can see we've got some requests pretty spread out geographically. And so this map view is helpful for our team to figure out what is an efficient route to deal with these problems. And if I'm in this area, I may try to touch base on these three different requests. So that's helpful there. And open up this request here. So what I'm going to show you here is the first part that's filled out on this request. It's pretty short. It's just a summary of the problem that they found. So we've got things like the date, our business unit, general area who the supervisor is and how urgent the request is. This is a key piece of information because some things can wait a couple days while other things need to get fixed right away. And they're also identifying the ranch that they're on and facilities that might be affected. And then we've got 3 general areas or categories of problems. So they're usually electrical, something to do with a filter station or a leak. They're filling out a brief description and answering like just 2 questions, whether the problem area is marked and the line is drained. And then they're attaching any photos and video that might be helpful to the maintenance team to assess the problem. So go ahead and click on this photo. So this, you can see it's a leak in the field. Looks like there's probably a pipe running beneath that windrow, and that's got a leak in it. So the maintenance team would open up this request, make an assessment. They could travel to that site. So we can look at that here on the map. Now this is a very young orchard, so it's kind of easier to see from across the field, but you can imagine on an older orchard we have a bigger canopy. Using this map view is really helpful to find a leak that's right in the middle of the field. So rather than telling somebody, yeah, you know, count 100 rows from the east side of the ranch and go over there, they could just simply use their location to find that leak exactly where it is.
Right.
So another benefit, again, is nobody's wasting time trying to find the problem because we've already captured that information.
Yeah, so then these, as they're reported, those are observed in the field. They're found by someone on the site. They sync those up to someone back in the office who can distribute that to the maintenance team. How does that maintenance process work, the kind of follow-up?
Yeah, so the creation of the request generates an email alert. And so the maintenance teams typically working out in the field or in a shop, they'll check their phone, they'll get the alert, they'll sync their Fulcrum app. And they're able to do things like, just filter to the ones they haven't addressed yet. I didn't turn the filter on. There we go. And, make an assessment of what they want to fix there and visit that request or make an assessment based on the photos and things like that are submitted. And then they're going to fill out the rest of the request when they've completed the work on that. So it's this last section. They can put in a final description, the date they actually completed it, any photos that might show what the work that they did. And that moves the status of this request from in progress to completed.
So that whole workflow from capture to completion is all in a single Fulcrum app.
Correct. And let's say as an irrigator that has reported a problem, what they would be doing is syncing up to see if their requests had moved from reported to in progress, or completed. So the benefit of this is that it's tracked in the app and you're not relying on somebody to call you and say, hey, by the way, your pump's working again, go ahead and run your water. That certainly is nice to have, but sometimes communication is difficult where we're working with radios and things like that, and it's nice to be able to have that information at your fingertips and know the status of your requests.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that you had told me about with this use case was just the simplicity of something just situational awareness, being able to know if I'm either the irrigator or even someone in kind of operations, without having to talk to anyone, I can get a picture of what the current state looks like. No more texting back and forth and asking questions or sending emails or wondering where your ticket is in the queue. You can check without having to wonder about it. So that's a nice, it's almost like just an outcome of doing it with a simple reporting tool like this, is that you can get that oversight ability.
Yeah, I think, prior to this, the maintenance team was getting requests in many different ways, like you mentioned, text message, email, phone calls. And then it was hard to track the information that went back and forth. And this app has really helped to improve communication between the different departments. And everybody sees the same thing and has visibility to the same information.
Yeah, that's interesting. So one question I had here about this, and this goes sort of for every app that you build like this, how does the process kind of evolve from, when you start out knowing we have this problem, we have maintenance requests that come in, we now have Fulcrum, sort of often the use cases kind of start primitive with a very simple reporting form, and now it sounds like over the years you've added, email alerting and a closure component where the follow-up happens. And how do you tend to work through those kinds of use cases with Fulcrum, with like the irrigation or others, like start small and kind of add on as you learn?
Yeah, that's exactly our approach. So part of our job is to build some consensus when we're gathering the requirements. So in this case, you had irrigators and field supervisors reporting the problem, getting their feedback and input on what they need to report. And then you've got the maintenance team, and then you have upper management also wanting to be able to have visibility on how many requests we get, and the average time that we take to fix it and things like that. So our recommendation is generally start with the short list of the information that you need that's going to have the highest impact, and then we can talk about adding certain fields and functionality after the fact. 'Cause what we found is that if you start off too complex, you can overwhelm people, and you also run the risk of collecting data where people are just trying to fill in the required field and get it done, and it's not necessarily good information. So
yeah.
Our approach is keep it simple, and then think about the things that you could add and the functionality that you can add to the application.
Yeah, and like you said, part of the process that comes with standardizing and unifying that procedure is that everyone's doing the same thing. So trying to arrive at that consensus and shared understanding of what to collect, when to collect it. Some might want something really complex, some might want something really simple, and I've always seen in these use cases that it actually is healthy for the organization to talk through those things, to understand like basically why things are being collected as they are, instead of the thing we all have seen before working with any kind of field use case where years can go by and no one really remembers why we do a thing a certain way. It's just part of the procedure. You can actually adapt those procedures as you go along, learning from how you're using it. So
we definitely experience that, and it's always helpful for us to put boots on the ground and whatever it is in this app, see what it's like to submit a request, and make sure it's not too cumbersome, experience what it's like to fill out this information in the field, and make sure you have the right device and things like that. So
yeah.
The other approach that I think is important in kind of determining what goes in the app, to make sure that the users know that this is a flexible tool, and so we can make changes to it as they come up with ideas, or if a process changes. And that's the beauty of what we found in Fulcrum, is that we can adapt to changes, and users know that we're not stuck with what we have once we build it. If their needs change, we can make that change in the app and make their lives easier.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you, what kinds of other things are you doing with map data in this use case? In this one, do they have other kind of reference guides or property boundaries or things that they use?
Yeah. So what's often used are offline map layers. So I'm going to go ahead and enable one of those. So now we're seeing the same data with our branch and block boundaries and information.
Yeah.
And this is useful. I mean, we have hundreds of branch numbers and things like that. And while I guarantee you there are people at our company that have all of these memorized and know exactly where everything is, I don't have that superpower yet. So I rely on these map layers quite heavily. And that's one example of the different mapping that we're using. You mentioned, some other reference information. I'm going to go back into one of the requests. So one of the things that we do is we load lookup information on our facilities. So this 39831 is a pump, and I'm going to click on this. It's a record link, and I'm pulling up information about that booster pump. I can see things like the electric meter ID, which might be helpful if we're contacting PG&E. I can see this is a 60 horsepower motor. So this is information that's helpful for the user out in the field that we're loading. And another sort of use case of location here is that we often have to get permits to dig if we're, fixing something in the ground, and we need to provide the coordinates for that. So the nice thing about the app is we're already collecting the location information. So if in fact we need to share that information to the county or an agency, we're able to do that really easily.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about one of the other use cases you have, which is what you call the pressure bomb readings app. Explain a bit about what that is, because that, as I understand it, that use case is a little bit different, where your irrigation maintenance requests originate in the field, right, where there's someone on site sees an issue and they report it up. In the case of your pressure tests, you're actually creating a set of essentially like sampling sites and then distributing that work down to technicians to go in and do.
Right. So the pressure bomb readings app, the main objective is to collect these pressure chamber or pressure bomb readings, and those readings give irrigation managers and schedulers data on how water stressed the trees may be, and gives them the opportunity to adjust the irrigation schedule as needed. A pressure bomb device, it's something that's uses air pressure to, well, let me start at the beginning.
It's a sensor, right? It's not as bad as it sounds.
Yeah. So an irrigation technician goes out to a predetermined tree, a predetermined site, like Coleman mentioned. They pull a leaf from that tree, and then they use this device to apply the air pressure to it. And what they're looking for through a magnifying glass is how much pressure it took for a little droplet of water to come out of the stem of the leaf. And so the more pressure it takes to see that little droplet of moisture, indicates that leaf is more stressed, or that tree is more stressed than not. So these sites or these trees are, pre-selected, and they're usually used year after year, and they're meant to be a baseline for the trees around them. So a tree that represents the ones in close proximity. And these irrigation techs are going back to these sites every 1 to 2 weeks during our irrigation season to collect these readings and make sure that we've got visibility to how the trees are trending and whether or not we need to adjust our irrigation schedules.
And that starts with a data set that you like you said, you're predetermining those actual trees that they're going to go and sample, and then importing that into Fulcrum. Does that start as GIS data?
It did, yeah. So this GIS data, the location of these sites, we've had for many years, before we had Fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
And those sites, that location information was collected and maps are provided to our irrigation teams so they could go out and identify the tree. So typically there's a little stake in the ground with that site ID to identify that that's a pressure bomb reading tree. And I thought this would be an interesting app to show because it's really simple, and it's an example of where we're using location data that we already had.
Right. Yeah, something that was known and consistent and stays consistent, where you're effectively creating observations at the same location repeatedly, versus discovering them kind of ad hoc, like in that first use case.
So I'll briefly show what's collected. It's basically a irrigation text name, the date. The time is important because we want to take readings around midday and be consistent about that. And then they can filter down the site list by ranch or type, but they can also just pick the site off the map. So, if I'm standing here, I know I'm at this site. And then I'm going to use the pressure bomb device to collect the reading and enter that. Sometimes they take a second reading from a second leaf, and that's it. And what makes this information useful is that we're providing reports that show summary level data. We use this like NP is non-Perel, one of our varieties, so we show by location, what our trends and averages are by variety and by block and ranch. And
you've got a historical archive as well for this. No?
Correct. Yeah. And typically, like I said, these sites are visited every 1 to 2 weeks. So you're able to see the trends and relate that to our irrigation events. So when we were running water there, and that helps us keep track of, we really need to, water this ranch, or we could actually hold off. And so if we need to move water somewhere else, we could do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very interesting. So the one kind of third collection use case, at least I wanted to talk about and have you show us some examples of, was the safety. What you call it? Do you call it safety and events or safety incidents?
We call it safety observations.
Safety observations. Yeah, in that use case where really it's around capturing those when they happen. That's either incidents or it's also like potential safety risks, right? So the thing I wanted Sophie to talk about here was that it's a event-driven, like bottom-up driven kind of use case similar to the maintenance request, but I wanted you to show the notification workflow, how that works.
Okay.
Because I think that's pretty interesting and unique.
Yeah, so this safety observation app is used to identify what Coleman mentioned, like opportunities for improvement. We also record best practices here, and you can also use it to share safety incident related data. And it's really designed for the safety team to be able to go out and observe a crew or some kind of job or activity that's going on, or walk through a workspace and highlight anything of note. So I'm going to go ahead and start a record here. So a lot of the standard information, location and buildings, the supervisor who's responsible for that activity or job. And then what they can also do is select recipients for an email notification of whatever they're reporting. So here we just load a list of employees and email addresses that could be included in the alert. And then they're going in and actually filling out the observation information. So I mentioned there's kind of 3 categories, things that can be improved, best practices, or reporting some type of incident. And real simple, a risk level, high, medium, or low. They're filling in a description and putting in photos, and they may put in a corrective action, so how this can be resolved. And then they may tag this information, kind of categorize it as a housekeeping type of observation, or it's an injury, that type of thing. That helps us summarize what types of problems we're seeing in the field or at our shops and nurseries. So that's basically what gets filled out. Like I said, they determine who they would want to be alerted to this information. And once that's synced, it's going to prompt an email alert to go out. And I will show you an example of that. So this is the same information that you just saw collected in the app: the location, supervisor's name. The observation type is an opportunity for improvement, and it's a medium risk. It was an electrical panel inside the shop that was missing a breaker. So this is the photo submitted in Fulcrum. And they've used the annotation tool to circle in white the part that's missing. And they submitted a couple photos here. And this was sent to the manager of that shop and the maintenance team that would work to fix or correct this issue.
Yeah, and you had told me before that, you know, the email piece, I mean, it's simple. Everybody's familiar with email and has easy access to it. But B, that you've got a lot of these people who are either on the maintenance teams and whatnot are not at a computer, maybe ever, and you kind of live on their phone or on their mobile device. So they still get these. They still get the notification and can respond to it without having to kind of have it sorted and handed to them or dispatched to them.
Yeah, so many of our employees are, you know, always working out in the field and rely on their mobile device. So it's nice to have the information summarized in an email that's easy to look at. The photos are embedded, so they don't have to follow another link or open something else to see the photos. And we can also share this information with people that you know, aren't our Fulcrum users. So maybe people within the company that wouldn't be reporting this type of thing, but could benefit from seeing this alert go out. And something like this is really easy to respond to. So I'm going to scroll up and show you we got a response to this alert, and they said, this has been fixed. Here's the photo of the missing cover installed. And so it just makes addressing issues pretty easy. They can follow up just by responding to the email and providing some proof. And these type of alerts are used, we have weekly staff meetings, and safety is such a priority for the company. So we want to share best practices, and if incidents happen, review them and figure out how to keep people safe. And so this is one of those tools that comes from Fulcrum data that's allowing us to do that and just improving communication.
And you have real world examples of things that actually happened, and both before and after, logs of what the incident was and what you did about it, that you can use and you use those in like the kind of regularized training and things like that.
Yeah, we definitely use those in our safety and general trainings. We've got a couple years of history in this app now, so we're able to provide some good examples. Location is also important in this application, because when we report things like a fire extinguisher that needs to get replaced or something like that, and you've got a shop with like 10 fire extinguishers in it, it's helpful to know which one it was, and it's easy to figure that out when there's a pin marking that fire extinguisher's location. Or we've had cases, where a canal crossing, because of rain, doesn't look safe, and we're able to mark that canal crossing as a hazard until something can be done about it. So this is, I think, been a very helpful tool at our company to keep people informed and to track things related to safety.
Excellent, excellent. So then I think what this kind of moves to, these are all field collection and field operations use cases. Then there's the question of, how do you report on these things? How do you run analysis? How do you do things with that data afterwards? And we talked a bit about before about some of the kinds of situational awareness reports that your people in the company use. Can you walk us through some of those examples that you have?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that what you do after you collect the data is really important, because it's nice to collect a bunch of data and get rid of paper processes, but unless you're doing something with the information, unless you're reporting things that people can actually take action on, then all of these efforts are not worth it, So on our end, reporting the information quickly, I think, has been part of the success that we've had with Fulcrum and mobile data collection in general. So we have near live data, and we tend to use Tableau as our reporting tool to create dashboards and represent our data on maps and things like that. So I'll show you an example. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right. So one of the things that we collect in Fulcrum are hive inspections. For almond pollination, we use beehives to pollinate almonds in February. And we conduct inspections of those hives every year. And we're looking for how many, the quality of the hives graded in frames. So how many frames of bees inside the box are covered front and back with bees. And what you guys are seeing here on the right is a map of our hive inspection results. Each dot, each circle is a hive site out in the field. That location is captured when they do the inspection. And those are color-coded based on the results of that inspection. Our almond bloom window is pretty short, right? It's a couple weeks. So during that time, we need to make sure that we've got strong hives that are pollinating the almonds. And we're looking at this data as it's coming in to see if we've got, a problem with our hives. Then we probably need to supplement and bring in additional hives to make sure that that ranch is covered and we're going to get a good pollination there. So this is another use case that we have where we are presenting the results on a map, and we're also using it to give beekeepers averages on their frame counts and make sure that we've got the right count of hives in the field. We're shooting for about 2 hives per acre, and these inspections are confirmation that we've got good hives and we've got the right number of hives as well.
Yeah, and the point that you made about the time window, I think, is a critical component of this feedback loop of being able to report on and then react to what you're seeing, where you need as near real time of update as you can have in order to react in time in that window. It's so short, right? If you're doing this manually and waiting on data to be transcribed and uploaded and read back, by the time it's been days, maybe too late to even do anything with it. So it's a cool aspect of this is the ability to get a real-time ground picture of what's happening.
Yeah, we send reports like this out, and we also have reports on our Tableau server that our field personnel and managers can look at and zoom in to a specific area and look at all the detail.
And I know this is one detail here is what you're showing here is really a printout coming from that Tableau dashboard or Tableau data. And that data, I believe you told me before, it's connected live to Fulcrum, right? So once it's wired up as a data source, it's just streaming in the new inspections as they come in. That's true, right?
Yeah, so we create Tableau data sources, and they're as up to date as our import via the Fulcrum API, which we do around every 6-7 minutes. So
right.
It's near live data, and
pretty close, yeah.
We're pulling all of that straight from Fulcrum.
And then how many different, whether it's this hive inspection work or other types of reports that you're doing, are there people across the organization consuming this stuff that are all the way up to the company leadership and things like that get various forms of reporting that comes out of Fulcrum or has data that comes out of Fulcrum?
Yeah, it's such a broad range of users in the company. So we've got the individual, so the person doing, for example, in this case, the hive inspections, they'll get a report at a daily time frame that tells them, look, this is how many hives you inspected, these are the ranches that you completed. And that's just helpful information for them to track, their efficiency and confirm that we've got all the data that they think that they've collected that day. And then, all the way up to the president of the company that wants to make sure that our frame averages, the average quality of our hives is as expected. So we're creating all kinds of different reports off of this data. Some are really high level, kind of year over year comparisons, and others are really detailed reports for people that are doing validation or looking for exceptions and that type of thing.
Has this sort of methodology for reporting and analytics changed anything about like the fundamentals of how you do this work? Like comparing today to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, how this kind of work was done. Is anything done differently?
Well, we're able to report and give year-over-year information on things that we didn't have in the past. For example, when you're reporting off of Excel spreadsheets that change every year, or or paper that gets translated to Excel spreadsheets, you lose a lot of the consistency that allows you to do that year-over-year reporting. So I'd say we've gained in that we're able to do reporting on a lot of processes that we weren't able to before. And
sort of like time trend analysis kinds of things.
Time trend analysis. And we're able to get, pretty much live data. And whereas before you might have a couple day delay in getting information, from the west side to the east side and to our different offices and scanned and entered and things like that. So it's also given us the ability to react and make decisions a lot faster.
Excellent, excellent. So I don't know if you had any other examples to show, but if we can, if we want to, we can move into see if anyone has any questions. We're happy to drill in deeper on some of these things or talk some more about some of the product features if there's any questions about that.
Yeah, I had one more report example.
Oh, yeah, let's look at this.
Might be useful.
Yeah.
So in this project that we call mummy removal, we are assessing how many mummy nuts are nuts that are left on the tree after harvest are left on the tree, and we're hoping that that number is low because those nuts that are left on the tree are a food source for moths and other pests that we have. So we go through this process that we call winter sanitation, that is cleaning out the orchards for the winter. And we determine how much shaking and another process we call polling of removing the nuts off the tree we need to do in order to prepare that orchard for the winter. And in this case, what we're doing is there are multiple sample sites or sample locations within these blocks, and we're rolling up the data to the block level to give our pest control advisors an idea of, on average, how many mummy nuts are left per tree, and help them make a decision about, whether we need to shake again or send in a polling crew. And I wanted to show this as an example of where we're aggregating the data at a block level and using Tableau to represent that data on a map.
Yeah, driving a spatial analysis of the data. Yeah. So when you look at something like this spatially versus, just a table of results or something, does this tell you anything, at least in some cases, about like if one plot is worse dramatically than others, like what happened there? Do you get to any kind of root cause that can help prevent it in the future?
That's a great question. Again, location has such a big impact on all of this data. So for example, it could be that a block was particularly hard to travel through, right? So if the rows were really, really muddy and the equipment couldn't get through, the shakers couldn't get through, that might have impacted that block. When we look at things like pest pressure, we look at what are our neighbors doing and how are they treating their pest treatment strategy and things like that. So this location context that we're able to provide by reporting things like that help us answer some of those questions, but there's so many variables that tends to be a challenge as well.
Yeah, it's certainly like something, if you don't have the location data, you don't do the spatial analysis, you definitely have no chance of getting at like deeper root causes or relationships. But I could see how it'd be non-trivial to understand that always. But even if it has an operational impact of knowing where to go, you know, first, second, third, that even is a help in using the spatial data.
Yeah, it helps make those decisions about prioritization, and also thinking of the cost and benefit of what it's going to cost us to address this issue and what the benefit will be for whatever treatment option we decide. And
right.
The other thing that these types of mapping results help us with is sometimes it's just there to confirm what what people are seeing in the field. You know, yeah, I went to this block and it did seem like there were more mummies left on the tree than in other blocks. So maybe we had a different crew working on that block or a different contractor.
Sure.
And maybe that has some impact. So a lot of it is confirmation on what people are seeing out in the field and sort of backing up their observations with data.
That's great. So I think we're nearing the end of our hour here. I'd like to, if there are any questions from the attendees, take some of those at this point.
Absolutely. We do have a few questions. So Sophie, a question for you. How much work and duration of time did it take to customize the Fulcrum application for your business needs?
So some of our simple applications, like the pressure bomb readings one, that might take probably, in terms of like the setup of the form, is really quick. You could do that in 15, 20 minutes. The longer process, I would say, was setting up the Fulcrum API. I don't have an exact time frame on how long that took us, but building applications is pretty quick.
Excellent. I know that's great news for folks. For you, Coleman, does this integrate with Esri or perhaps other GIS tools?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to do that. There's some tools with layers. So what Sophie showed with the kind of land boundary reference map layers, through that piece of the product, you can load layers from Esri using WMS as a format. There is also web, like map tile services that you can load. And then the other direction, there's also ways to get data from Fulcrum into Esri. So particularly like ArcGIS Online, but also even ArcGIS Desktop, or what's it called, ArcGIS Pro. You can use a feature we call shared views to generate a feature service URL that you can then load on that side. So kind of like what Sophie was showing with the Tableau data, where that data is like a connected data source that's pulling from Fulcrum. You can do the same thing where a layer can be brought into ArcGIS Online real time from Fulcrum.
Awesome. I know that's important for a lot of folks that not too many of us have just one tool. It's a combination of great tools that make life easier for us. Someone would like to know if they want apps built to their specifications, but they don't want to build them themselves.
Yeah, that's something we can certainly help with. We have a professional services team that's one of their specialties is consulting with customers and actually not only building out the apps, but the actual workflow processes and things that go with it. So things like Sophie showed, the Tableau integration or the email notifications or things like that. We do that all the time for customers. It's help to build out those like more complete workflows, not only just the app structure part of it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think, Coleman, you had another little goodie for them.
Yep, we do if anyone has not already tried Fulcrum or not already aware of it, we do a free trial to get started and kick the tires for yourself. Like Barbary said, go to fulcrumapp.com and you'll see it there on the page.
We hope that you will join us for more geospatial webinars. Have a wonderful day. Tell a friend about Fulcrum and Directions Magazine. Thanks, everybody.